Hi guys, German Prepper here. Politicians love to spin the truth to fit their narrative the world over, but one of the worst lies reported on in the Western media right now is that sanctions work and that whatever the personal costs people are forced to endure, sanctions are still worth it. We are told this every day while we suffer energy crisis, massive inflation and growing food shortages. Pointing out the madness will have you labelled as a Russian sympathiser or worse. Knowing this then, it is time to stir the pot. The Russian Federation's arguably second most powerful man, and in my personal opinion most candid politician, Dmitry Medvedev, has made a very interesting statement on Western sanctions imposed on the Russian Federation. Forgetting for a moment sentiments and sides, regardless of justification and deservedness, he makes some very good points, which everyone, wherever you are in the world, should take note of. You will never hear these facts and thoughts uttered in the mainstream media, so listen through carefully, guys. Infernal sanctions went to the 8th round. As you know, there are 9 circles in hell, so there are still reserves. Let our enemies rage on. After all, it has long been clear that winding these circles without much harm to the appointed sinner is an empty business and expensive. What did this idiotic idea of former partners result in today? For Russia. From the very beginning of the special military operation, the West began consistently firing at our country from a multi-barreled sanctions MLRS. Our stupid opponents fail to understand a simple thing. Russia has long lived in conditions of restrictions and has learned well to adapt to rapidly changing circumstances. Our economy demonstrates a very decent vitality. Inflation is gradually slowing down, dropping from a peak of 17.8% in April to 13.7% in September. There is every reason to believe that by the end of the year, it will not exceed 12%. Greater stability is shown by GDP, which by the end of the year will decline much less than expected. In general, the West once again failed to tear to shreds our economy. The main thing is that Russia has not only the necessary margin of safety, but also all the opportunities for further development. For the West. At first, our enemies desperately pounded their chests. They convinced their citizens and the whole world that they could easily do without Russian oil, gas, fertilizers, medicines and grain. Without buyers for their burgers, clothes, cosmetics, cars and internet services. Now they have realised that their sanctions are self-mutilation. A typical crossbow in your own arse. Gasoline, groceries and utilities are rising sharply in price. People, out of desperation, go to rallies. Politicians shrug helplessly. Beautiful words are repeated. It seems like you have to pay for democracy. Without answering, however, the question of why the hell such a democracy is needed. According to Eurostat, inflation in the Eurozone is the highest in recent decades, more than 9%. However, in some EU countries, the situation is simply catastrophic. Among them are the most frostbitten enemies of Russia. They are fully reaping the fruits of their vomiting hatred of our country. In Estonia, inflation increased by 22.2% in annual terms. In Lithuania by 21.1%. In Latvia by 20.8%. In the Czech Republic by 17.3%. And these double-digit anti-records are far from the limit. Ahead is a cold winter without Russian gas. And this despite the fact that the marginal price of our blue fuel has not yet been introduced. It seems that now they can be left without gas forever. In parallel, Europe's stupid bureaucrats are begging their citizens to save energy. And in order to better stimulate them, they are ready to shift the growing costs to users and even put them in jail. For the whole world. The result is sad. With its manic sanctions, the West has achieved only one thing: the rapid destruction of the entire architecture of world trade in the form in which it has developed at a record pace for the past half-century. Private property is no longer sacred. Trade contracts are not binding. The currency of settlement is not a means of payment. Global supply chains are undermined. Western analysts expect a slowdown in the economic growth of all developed countries. In the next 12 months, Europe is facing a recession, At the same time, it should be noted that for the main instigator of the hybrid war against Russia, the United States, the results will be less catastrophic. But even there, they are well aware of the grave consequences the actions of their decrepit president led to. No illusions. The West intends to go against Russia to the end, to introduce ever new senseless restrictions against it, hoping, like in recent years, to undermine the Russian economy as much as possible. Scattering of fragments from such indiscriminate use of sanctions weapons throughout all countries of the world and to innocent people. Meanwhile, without normal international trade, chaos and poverty will be felt in various parts of the world. However, it is useless to appeal to the prudence of our enemies in the West. And you don't need to. Enemies must be forced to beg for mercy in a lost economic battle, and complete it with their complete and unconditional surrender. There we are, guys, an interesting and of course completely biased propaganda piece. A question for you all now to end. Regardless of sides, sentiment and personal feelings, do you think Medvedev makes fair points about the madness and self-harm of sanctions for Western nations? As always, looking forward to reading your answers. Keep prepping, guys. Cheers for now.